Good evening and welcome to the Capitol Report on NTD Television. I'm Jack Bradley, in for Steve Lance. Here's what's coming up. Amid alarming polls, President Biden making a flurry of outreach efforts to black voters, and former President Trump visiting Minnesota, seeking to flip the traditionally blue state. The Republican National Lawyers Association hosts its annual policy conference, featuring speeches from House Speaker Mike Johnson, Senator Ted Cruz, and other prominent GOP attorneys. Manhattan DA Alvin Bragg's so-called hush money case against former President Trump hinges on the testimony of Trump's now disbarred former attorney and convicted felon, Michael Cohen. How credible was Cohen on the stand? We ask a legal expert. President Biden in full swing to reclaim black support. That's as new polling shows black voters abandoning Biden. Joining us now live is NTD's White House correspondent Iris Tao. Iris, good evening. Tell us more about President Biden's latest push with black voters and the timing of it.
Good evening to you, Jack. President Biden is making a flurry of appeal to reach black voters. It comes as a New York Times poll this week shows that Biden's support among black voters is down 20% compared with 2020. That's driven by issues like the economy and the war in Gaza. Here's President Biden today trying to appeal to that group by contrasting himself with his predecessor. Watch.
Black history is American history. My predecessor and his extreme MAGA friends are now going after diversity, equity, and inclusion all across America. They want a country for some, not for all.
That was President Biden marking the 70th anniversary of a landmark Supreme Court case that ended school desegregation. And this weekend, Biden will also be speaking in Detroit and also be making a commencement address at Morehouse College, which is a historically black university. And that address, meanwhile, is already sparking controversy as protest over the war in Gaza is expected to happen during his speech. Here's the White House today talking about Biden's speech, saying he's going to strike the right tone. Watch.
He's been working on these remarks for the past couple days, I can assure you, with his senior advisors. He's taking this incredibly seriously, and he understands, as the president tends to do, meet the moment that we're in.
And the White House adds that President Biden has been treating peaceful protests in a respectful way and will continue to do so. Jack.
Well, Iris, we'll see how President Biden responds to the potential protest there. And so now what's Trump doing today on his day off from the New York trial?
So former President Trump is taking a day off from his trial today to attend his youngest son Barron's high school graduation ceremony. Later today, he will also be speaking at a GOP fundraiser in Minnesota, which is a traditionally blue state that he's vowing to flip in this year's election. And also today, Trump announced that on behalf of his yet-to-be-chosen VP pick, he's now accepting an invitation by Fox News for a vice presidential debate. Trump says he wants to do it at Virginia State University, which in that case would be the first traditionally black university to host a debate. So we're seeing now both candidates trying to reach out to black voters who are crucial to this year's election. Jack.
Iris, thank you very much for that update. Hunter Biden's attorneys now seeking to delay their client's tax case in California. This comes after the president's son lost his bid to postpone a Delaware gun trial earlier this week. In a court filing, Hunter Biden's lawyers stressed the difficulties of dealing with two criminal trials at the same time, especially given both cases are happening in different parts of the country. They're now seeking to push the trial back until September. The judge said he would hear the requests later this month. Hunter Biden is facing 3 felony counts and 6 misdemeanor charges in connection with alleged tax evasion. He's accused of skipping taxes and filing false return. As of now, the trial is set for June. And in Delaware, Hunter Biden is facing a separate gun case, which is also scheduled to start next month. Election integrity and immigration, hot topics of discussion at the Republican National Lawyers Association today. This year's theme centered around political assaults on the rule of law. NTD's Washington correspondent Luis Martinez reports from Arlington, Virginia.
The Republican National Lawyers Association gathered in Arlington, Virginia this Friday to discuss how to uphold the rule of law. According to the president of the association, Michael Cohen, this year's conference will not focus on new legislation, but on how to execute existing ones.
And that's what we're fighting for, is the rule of law here. And the Biden administration has ignored the rule of law, whether it's ignoring the Supreme Court on the student loan cases, or whether it's the border, which he's ignored all the border laws. So it's not even about a policy debate. It's about, do you believe in the rule of law, or are you ignoring the rule of law?
3 attorneys generals, Senator Ted Cruz from Texas, and even Speaker of the House Mike Johnson addressed attendees on the importance of election integrity and the founding principles of the Constitution.
President Biden has invited an illegal immigration catastrophe around our country, and we have to step up and secure our elections right now so that we can do our duty and defend not just our core principles, but our Constitution itself.
During the conference, policy differences in between Republicans and Democrats were highlighted, but Speaker of the House Mike Johnson emphasized that American exceptionalism unites most of Americans.
We are the last best hope of man on the earth. Reagan used to remind us of that. He's, of course, quoting Lincoln. What they understood was that we are different, we are exceptional, the greatest nation in the history of the world, the most powerful, most free, most benevolent, the most secure. We're the best for a reason, because we were built on those core principles. We have to maintain them.
This year's Republican National Lawyers Association concluded with a private event where attendees got to meet members of former President Donald Trump's legal team. Reporting from Arlington, Virginia, Luis Eduardo Martinez, NTD News.
Former President Trump was getting a strong show of support in the courtroom this week from Republican members of Congress. What impact does his now disbarred former attorney Michael Cohen have on the Trump's defense? Joining me now to discuss Trump's week in court is Will Trackman, General Counsel for the Mountain States Legal Foundation. Will Trackman, thank you very much for joining us today.
Yeah, it's great to be here. Thank you so much.
Now, Donald Trump's hush money trial is nearing its end. How do you think the jury is likely to decide here?
Well, I think it's safe to say that Trump had his best day so far yesterday with Michael Cohen's testimony and the cross-examination going very well. I think the jury is going to look at that and see a very skeptical view with respect to Mr. Cohen. On the other hand, this is a New York jury, so they're going to be a little bit more skeptical of Mr. Trump as well. And so I really do think the jury may decide to weigh the evidence against President Trump and decide that they can have an influence on the election, which is unfortunate, but that's where we are. At least there's a 50-50 chance, I would say.
Michael Cohen's testimony was called into question. Can you talk a bit about why his testimony was questionable?
Well, so Mr. Cohen has a history of saying, I'm telling the truth now. Before I was lying, before I wasn't telling the truth, but now I'm being honest and you ought to believe me. And so President Trump's defense counsel was able to poke holes in his story, all the different times that Mr. Cohen said something that wasn't true. And so if you've been lying all this time, why should we believe you now? I think that message resonates. If you're a juror and you see someone who's consistently lied over and over again, and then all of a sudden they're asking you to believe them, and a man's liberty is at stake based on their word, I think the jury is going to be reticent to buy into what Mr. Cohen is selling.
What do you make of all the support that Trump's getting from Congress? There's been numerous lawmakers and allies that have gone to Manhattan in support of him, calling into question that even the judge's credibility. So what do you make of all of that, and will it help his presidential bid?
Well, President Trump is the standard bearer for one of the major parties, so he's going to have a lot of support. I saw the Speaker of the House was out there giving a speech recently. I think that's not unusual when you have a standard bearer who may be the leader of the free world early next year. That's going to happen. Clearly, a lot of the Republican messaging right now is also, again, about 2 tiers of justice, because you have Hunter Biden, you have all sorts of other criminal issues on the left, and they don't seem to get the attention or the attention of prosecutors the way that President Trump is getting. So I do think that messaging also works for election purposes, and it's true that there is a 2-tiered system of justice right now in this country. It's unfortunate, but here we've got members of Congress, the Speaker of the House, who are shining a light on that and killing 2 birds with 1 stone, because they can support President Trump at the same time they criticize the judge, who has made contributions to Democrats and whose daughter works for Democrats, and they can talk about their loyalty to President Trump, who may once again take office, and they can talk about their own policymaking, which is that they want fairness and justice.
President Biden just signed the Federal Aviation Administration bill on Thursday. Your organization is Mountain Legal States Foundation. They're suing the FAA because they implemented new diversity requirements in the hiring process. Can you talk a bit about that?
Yeah, so we represent over 900 people who would have been air traffic controllers, except that back in the Obama administration, they flushed our clients' test. Many of our clients got 100% on that test, and they decided there were too many whites in the hiring pool, so they adopted a new test that was gerrymandered. Some of the questions were like, how many sports did you play in high school? Obviously no relevance to being an air traffic controller. But our clients never got jobs because they changed the test. And President Biden now has a whole of government approach to DEI, and they've echoed the themes of the Obama administration, caring more about race, more about the gender of the people who are working at the FAA, as opposed to skill, merit, competence, experience. And those are the things that, of course, we do value when we fly from point A to point B. Now, yes, the FAA reauthorization passed. It had a few measures that reduce the DEI that's going on at the FAA, but not enough. And I was disappointed to see that the bill doesn't contain a complete exclusion on DEI or what's called disparate impact theory in employment law. So I do think that there's still room, unfortunately, for the Biden administration to say, we're still going to consider race because we need to break down barriers. But that's just a feint. What they're doing is really putting race above skill and merit.
And what could this lead to if it keeps going on with considering DEI in the FAA?
Yeah, so I like to say there's a little bit of slack in the system. We have a good system because there are a lot of good people that are in it. We haven't had a fatal crash in a while, but we have had near misses, we have had incidents, and so you want the best people for the job. Aviation is just one of those industries where there's going to be unpredictable circumstances. So whether it's weather or mechanical difficulties or an unruly passenger, you're going to want the best people in the seats. And so if you start putting race above merit, you're inevitably going to court danger. Now that doesn't mean a crash is going to happen tomorrow. I'm not being alarmist that people need to stop flying. But it does increase the risk in the system. And eventually, if you do that over the course of months and years, something bad will happen.
Will Trackman, General Counsel of the Mountain Legal States Foundation, thank you very much for your time.
Thanks so much.